Before the rain ever fell, before a single cloud darkened the sky, before a single drop touched the earth, they were already laughing at me. I still remember the sound of it, sharp and cruel, echoing across the manicured lawns of our HOA like a pack of hyenas circling wounded prey. They stood there with their clipboards and their fake smiles, staring at the ugly gray concrete wall I had built around my home, shaking their heads as if I had just committed a crime against beauty itself. And at the center of it all was her, HOA Karen, a 35-year-old woman with a sharp blonde bob haircut, cold, commanding eyes that looked at people like property, rigid, authoritative posture, wearing a tailored power pink pantsuit and a crisp white shirt that screamed control. She didn't just dislike my wall, she hated me for daring to protect what was mine. I stood there in front of them, calm on the outside, even though my heart was beating like a war drum. I was a tall, well-built man in my early 40s, about 6'2", with a mature face that had seen both success and betrayal, deep brown eyes that measured everything, light hair cut short with a stubble beard that gave me a permanent look of quiet defiance. I wore simple, neutral clothes because I didn't need flashy things to prove my worth. The wall behind me wasn't pretty, it was raw concrete, thick, reinforced, ugly in their eyes. But I knew something they didn't. I had studied the land. I had watched the water patterns for years. I knew what was coming. And that's where the hook really sinks in, because what they laughed at that morning would be the only thing standing between survival and destruction just minutes later. Karen stepped forward, heels clicking on the pavement like a judge walking to deliver a sentence. She raised her clipboard and pointed at my wall. "This monstrosity violates HOA aesthetics," she said with a voice that was sweet on the surface and poisonous underneath. "It's lowering property values. You have 30 days to tear it down." The people behind her nodded. Some smirked. Others looked away, pretending they weren't enjoying this. They all thought they had power over me. They all thought rules were their shield. I smiled. Not a big smile, just a slow, knowing curve of my lips. "You might want to reconsider," I said quietly. That made them laugh even harder. Karen tilted her head. "Is that a threat?" "No, it's a warning." They laughed again, louder this time, mocking me, mocking my ugly wall, mocking the idea that I knew something they didn't. Someone even took out their phone and recorded me, probably to upload it to the HOA group chat so they could ridicule me later. They walked away shaking their heads, leaving me standing there with my so-called eyesore. And I whispered to myself, almost too softly to hear, "You'll see." The sky started to darken that afternoon in a way that made the air feel heavy, the kind of darkness that presses down on your chest and makes you uneasy even if you don't know why. I stood on my porch, staring at the horizon, watching thick clouds roll in like an invading army. The wind picked up, trees swayed, leaves scattered across the road. I could feel it in my bones. This wasn't just another storm. You see, months earlier, when I bought this house, I discovered something buried in old town records and geological surveys. Our HOA neighborhood was built on a natural floodplain, a dry one most of the time, but when the rain came hard enough, the water had nowhere to go except straight through our homes. The developers had ignored it. The HOA had buried it, but I hadn't. That's why I built the wall. Not a decorative fence, a flood barrier. Thick concrete reinforced with steel, angled just right to redirect water away from my property and into the natural runoff channel behind my land. It wasn't beautiful, it was smart. But smart doesn't always look good to people who only care about appearances. The rain began as a light drizzle. Then it became heavier. Then it started pounding the ground so hard it sounded like 1,000 drums beating in unison. I stood behind my wall, watching water start to pool at the edges of the neighborhood. And here comes another hook because this is the moment everything changed. Within minutes, the street in front of my house turned into a shallow river. Water flowed downhill exactly the way I had predicted, rushing towards the lowest part of the development, where all of their picture-perfect homes were. I could hear shouting in the distance, doors slamming, cars honking, people running.
I walked up to the top of my ugly wall and looked over it. Chaos. Water was already lapping at the front steps of Karen's house. Her perfect green lawn was disappearing under a brown, swirling flood. Neighbors were dragging furniture outside, trying to save what they could. Some were screaming, some were crying, some were just standing there in shock, watching their lives get washed away. And me? Not a single drop crossed my wall. The barrier held strong, redirecting the floodwater like a river hitting a dam. The water surged past my home and poured straight into their streets, their garages, their living rooms. I didn't feel happy. Not yet. I felt something colder, something deeper, a sense of balance being restored. Karen ran down the street, her power pink pantsuit soaked, hair plastered to a face, makeup streaked. The cold, commanding eyes that once looked down on me were now wide with fear. She saw my wall, she saw the dry ground behind it, and she saw me standing there, calm and untouched by the storm. "Funny," I said, over the roar of the rain. "You called it a monstrosity." She swallowed hard. I was wrong, okay? Just do something." Now here's the part that makes people lean closer to the screen. I could have opened a gate I had built into the wall, a controlled release that would let some water flow through and equalize the flood. But I didn't have to. There was no law forcing me to, no authority telling me what to do. This was my wall, my property, my choice. And for the first time, Karen realized she had no power here. I let the moment stretch, let the rain beat down, let the fear in her eyes grow. Every second felt like an eternity to her. "Remember when you said I had 30 days? I asked quietly. "Looks like you only have minutes." Her knees buckled as another wave of water surged into her street, smashing against her front door. She started crying. Actual tears, not the fake ones she used in HOA meetings. "Please," she whispered, "we'll do anything." I leaned closer, my deep brown eyes locking onto hers. "You already did something," I said. Behind her, windows shattered as water forced its way inside. Alarms went off. People were yelling my name now, begging me to save them. This was the hook that kept them watching. This was the moment where revenge wasn't loud or violent. It was quiet, controlled. I didn't lift a hand. I didn't break a rule. I simply stood by my wall and let reality do the rest. After what felt like forever, I finally opened the gate just a little, just enough to ease the pressure, not enough to save everything, just enough to stop total destruction. The water began to drain slowly, leaving behind mud, ruined furniture, and shattered pride. When the rain finally stopped, the neighborhood looked like a battlefield. My home, protected by the ugly wall, stood clean and dry. Their homes looked like they'd been through a war. Karen stood in front of me, drenched, defeated, no longer the queen of the HOA. We won't touch your wall," she said weakly. "We promise." I nodded. Good. And as I turned away, I knew something had changed forever. They would never laugh at my ugly wall again. They would never laugh at me again. Because in the end, it wasn't beauty that saved me. It was being prepared. And sometimes the strongest revenge is simply letting people face the consequences of their own arrogance.
The rain didn't stop when the clouds cleared. That's something nobody tells you. Water leaves, but consequences stay. The neighborhood smelled like wet wood, mold, and panic. Mud clung to driveways. Ruined couches sat on sidewalks like corpses. Family photos floated in brown puddles. The HOA's perfect little kingdom had been reduced to a disaster zone, and the only dry island in it was my home, protected by that so-called ugly wall they laughed at. I stood behind it, hands resting on the cold concrete, watching them all walk around like ghosts. And here's another hook that keeps people watching. They weren't angry at the storm. They were angry at me for surviving it. Karen had changed. The 35-year-old HOA president with the sharp blonde bob, the power pink pantsuit, the cold, commanding eyes, she wasn't gone. She was just cracked. Her suit was gone now, replaced with soaked, wrinkled clothes, but the hunger for control, that was still burning behind her eyes. I could feel it. She didn't come to thank me. She came to find a way to punish me. 3 days after the flood, she knocked on my door. Not politely, not gently. Bang, bang, bang. I opened it slowly, calm, collected, dry, still untouched by the disaster that swallowed everyone else. Her eyes flicked behind me at my clean floors, my intact furniture, my safe little world. Jealousy burned through her like acid. "We need to talk," she said. I leaned against the doorframe. "About what?" She folded her arms. "About how your wall redirected the flood into the rest of the community." I almost smiled. "Redirected?" I said. "You mean obeyed gravity?" Her jaw tightened. "You knew this would happen." "Yes." "And you didn't warn us?" "I did," I said quietly. "You laughed." For a moment, her confidence wavered, just a flicker, but Karen didn't survive HOA politics by being weak. She straightened her posture, that rigid, authoritative stance snapping back into place like armor. "We're filing a formal complaint," she said. "You intentionally caused damage to HOA property." There it was, the hook behind the hook. They weren't just mad, they were scared. And scared people don't apologize, they attack. I nodded slowly. "Go ahead." Her lips curled into a thin smile. "We will." She walked away, already dialing her phone. That night, I sat at my desk going over my blueprints, flood models, land surveys, and old municipal drainage maps. I didn't build that wall out of paranoia. I built it out of knowledge. And knowledge is power. 2 days later, the HOA held an emergency meeting in the community hall, the same hall now smelling like damp carpet and regret. I walked in late on purpose. Every eye turned to me. Karen stood at the front, back in her power pink pantsuit, hair perfect again, mask of control glued back onto her face. She looked like a queen trying to pretend her kingdom wasn't underwater. "Let's begin," she said sharply. People started shouting. "His wall caused this. He blocked the water. He should pay for our damages." I let them yell, because when people scream, they reveal everything. Karen raised her hand. "Order. We will speak one at a time." Then she pointed at me. "You built an unapproved structure that altered natural water flow, resulting in catastrophic damage to HOA properties." I looked around the room. Dozens of angry, broken homeowners stared at me, and I delivered the next hook, calm and precise. "No. I built a wall that protected my land. Your houses were built on a floodplain. That's what destroyed you." Silence. Karen laughed. "That's ridiculous." I pulled out a folder. Inside were copies of old flood records, geological surveys, and the original development plans, the ones the HOA never showed anyone. I slid them onto the table. "You were warned when this neighborhood was built. The HOA buried it. You chose landscaping over safety." Her eyes flicked to the papers. She didn't read them. She didn't have to. She already knew. Her voice hardened. "This meeting is not about ancient paperwork. It's about accountability." I leaned forward. "Yes, it is." Then I stood up, tall, calm, unshaken. "I warned you. You laughed. I protected myself. You punished me for it. And now you're asking me to pay for your denial." The room shifted. People started whispering. Karen felt it slipping, so she did what HOA Karens always do when they're losing control. She lied. "You never warned us," she said loudly. That was her mistake. I tapped my phone, and the video played. Her mocking my wall, the neighbors laughing, her calling it a monstrosity. The room went dead silent. Karen's face went pale. That's when the real flood hit. Not of water, of truth. And it was just beginning. The silence after that video felt heavier than the storm ever did. Every eye in the room turned away from Karen and slowly towards me. And here's the hook that keeps people glued to the screen. When power is built on lies, one truth is enough to collapse it. Karen tried to speak. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out.
I could see it in her cold, commanding eyes, the calculations, the panic, the scramble to regain control. The power pink pantsuit that once made her look untouchable now looked like a costume she couldn't fill anymore. "This video proves nothing," she snapped, finally finding her voice. "It doesn't show intent." I nodded. "You're right. It shows contempt." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A man stood up. His basement flooded. His kids' bedrooms were destroyed. His insurance wouldn't cover most of it. "You knew?" he asked Karen. "You knew this could happen?" She hesitated. That hesitation was everything. Another woman spoke. "Is it true this land is a floodplain?" Karen turned to her. "That information is irrelevant." I stepped forward. "It's the most relevant thing in this room." I projected the old development map on the wall. Blue zones, red warning lines, arrows showing water flow. This neighborhood was built on the lowest natural drainage path in the valley. The rain didn't destroy your homes. The HOA did by pretending the risk didn't exist. Karen slammed her clipboard on the table. "This meeting is over." "No," I said calmly, "it isn't." I looked around. "Anyone here ever receive a flood risk disclosure when you bought your house?" No one raised hand. Karen's face went white. And that's when I realized something that sent a slow, cold smile across my face. They weren't just mad. They were betrayed. Karen tried to push past me. "We'll deal with this legally." I stepped aside, letting her pass. "Do whatever you want, but understand this. You built your authority on a lie, and lies dissolve in water." She stopped, slowly turned. "You think you won?" she asked. "I think," I replied softly, "you're standing on soaked ground with no foundation left." The HOA didn't collapse that day, but it cracked. And cracks, once they form, only spread. Over the next weeks, neighbors stopped answering Karen's calls. Meetings got canceled. People demanded records. Old emails surfaced. Budget reports showed millions spent on landscaping while the drainage upgrades were ignored. And through it all, my ugly wall stood there, solid, silent, unashamed. Every time someone walked past it, they were reminded of one thing. I was right. And that drove Karen insane. She started a smear campaign. Flyers appeared, anonymous posts in the HOA forum, rumors that I had manipulated the flood, that I had somehow engineered the disaster. None of it stuck, because when water reaches your ceiling, lies drown fast. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the mud finally dried, I heard footsteps outside my gate. Karen was standing there again, alone this time. No clipboard, no audience. Just fear. "You need to remove the wall," she said quietly. I studied her. The sharp blonde bob was still there, the posture was still rigid, but the power was gone. "Why?" I asked. Because it proves you were right." I smiled faintly. "And you can't survive that." She swallowed. "We can negotiate." I stepped closer to the gate, looking down at her like she once looked down at me. "No," I said, "we can coexist." "What does that mean?" "It means you stop pretending you own me, and I keep reminding everyone what happens when you ignore reality." She stared at me. Then she turned and walked away, defeated. And that's the hook for what comes next.
The storm had passed, but something far more dangerous was still moving through the neighborhood. Pride. And pride doesn't wash away with water. For weeks, the HOA tried to act like everything was back to normal. New grass was planted over mud. Fresh paint covered water stains. Karen returned to her meetings in her tailored power pink pantsuit, her sharp blonde bob once again perfectly styled, her cold, commanding eyes pretending nothing had changed. But everyone felt it. They could look at my house, dry and untouched behind that ugly concrete flood wall, and then look at their own warped floors and peeling walls, and they knew the truth. And here comes the final hook that makes people stay to the very end. The flood didn't destroy their homes. It destroyed the illusion of control. Karen couldn't stand that. She started tightening rules, fines, warnings, petty violations. Grass an inch too tall, trash bins out 5 minutes late, parking in the wrong spot. She was punishing the whole neighborhood just to feel powerful again. But she focused most of it on me. Violation notices stacked on my door. Threats, letters. She wanted to break me down. What she didn't know was that I was already 3 moves ahead. You see, while she was busy trying to punish me, I was quietly doing something far more dangerous. I was letting people talk. Every neighbor who stopped by my wall, every person who stared at it, every family who had lost thousands in damages, I listened. And when people talk after they've been hurt, they reveal everything. They told me about hidden HOA funds, about maintenance budgets that never went where they were supposed to, about Karen approving cosmetic upgrades while ignoring safety warnings. And I didn't need authorities. I didn't need lawyers. I just needed truth. So I built something else. Not another wall, a mirror. One evening, during a community gathering, I set up a projector on my lawn, right behind my ugly flood wall. Karen arrived, confident again, thinking this was just another social event. Then the screen lit up. Emails, invoices, meeting minutes, budget reports, everything she thought nobody would ever see. I didn't speak. I let her own words do the damage. Gasps filled the air. Neighbors stepped closer to the screen, reading how she had ignored flood warnings, diverted funds, silenced concerns, and buried reports, all to keep the neighborhood looking perfect. Karen's face drained of color. "This is illegal," she shouted. I finally spoke. So was lying to everyone who trusted you. The crowd turned on her. Not violently, not loudly. Worse, silently. One by one, people walked away from her and toward me. And that was when she realized something far more terrifying than any storm. She had no one left. Karen tried to leave, but she stopped when she saw my wall in front of her. That same ugly concrete barrier she once mocked. The thing that had protected me, the thing that had exposed her. She stood there, small for the first time, staring at it. I stepped beside her. "You know what's funny?" I said softly. "You tried to tear this down because it didn't look nice, but it's the only honest thing in this neighborhood." She didn't answer. She couldn't. The HOA never officially removed her. They didn't have to. No one listened to her anymore. No one followed her. Her power was gone. And as the seasons changed and the memory of the flood faded, one thing never did. That wall. Still standing, still ugly, still strong. A reminder that sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's permanent. And sometimes the people who laugh at you for protecting yourself are the ones who end up begging for mercy when the water rises.